Well, happy 4th of July. I know we celebrated it yesterday, but the celebration continues. In fact, I think the celebration of our freedom should continue year-round, and obviously our vigilance in protecting that freedom. And that's really what we're talking about today as we compare two diametrically opposed views of our nation's founding. You know, we've got the New York Times 1619 Project, and then we have the 1776 Commission, which was launched by President Trump. Now, I should have done this earlier on because I don't want you to think that I'm just creating this narrative. I want to play a clip, a sound clip from Nikole Hannah-Jones. She's a professor at UNC. And this was at the, I believe, the launch of the 1619 Project. They live streamed this announcement. This was in August of 2019. And I want you to hear it in her own words.
This project is above all else an attempt to set the record straight, to finally, in this 400th year, to tell the truth about who we are as a people and who we are as a nation.
Here, as I said, for 245 years, we've been celebrating the wrong birthday. How did people get it wrong for so long? Well, here's a clip of President Trump at his announcement of the 1776 Commission to combat what we were just talking about earlier with Michael, with Mike Gonzalez, about the CRT in our schools and universities, and the two are intertwined. So here's President Trump.
Students in our universities are inundated with critical race theory. This is a Marxist doctrine, holding that America is a wicked and racist nation, that even young children are complicit in oppression, and that our entire society must be radically transformed.
And now we're pleased to welcome back to the program Dr. Ben Carson. As you all know, Dr. Carson is a renowned pediatric neurosurgeon and former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development with the Trump administration, and he was also a part of the 1776 Commission, and he's a great friend and a real patriot. Dr. Carson, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you. Always good to be with you, Tony. And I'm so glad that you're emphasizing this program, and these programs, and the contradistinction between them, because the only thing that I feel that can really destroy our country right now is us. You know, it's not Russia or China or North Korea, it's us. And if we allow the seeds of discord to be sown, that's exactly what will happen. Jesus said it first: a house divided against itself cannot stand, re-emphasized by Abraham Lincoln. And when you look at this 1619 project, it basically is an attempt to rewrite history completely and focus everything around slavery. Now, I will readily admit that slavery is evil and horrible, but it's been around since there have been societies, and it's still around today. And I think we ought to be working very hard to get rid of it.
Dr. Carson, in part, was the ability of the New York Times and the 1619 Project, their ability to openly, blatantly rewrite history, was that possible because we don't know our history and because we're not teaching our children what our history really is, good and bad?
That's part of it. A lot of people really don't know their history. Part of the purpose of the 1776 Commission is to get people to actually read the Declaration of Independence. You'd be amazed at how many Americans have never read it. It's a short document. It's easy to do. The same thing with the Constitution. And yet I believe that these are documents that were divinely inspired, and they make it very clear that our rights are derived from God and not from government. Government is there to protect those rights, but they were given to us by God. And we seek those godly principles associated with the Judeo-Christian foundation of loving your neighbor, not canceling your neighbor, of allowing people to lead their lives as they see fit, to worship as they see fit, as long as those things are not interfering with the lives of other people. But 1776 is really there to make sure that people have the ammunition that they need. And that ammunition is based on education and knowing what really did take place in our country, and not allowing others to reinterpret that. And, you know, the fact that the 1619 Project says that Black people and people of color in this nation are severely oppressed, and that white people are responsible for all that. Stop and think about it for a moment. Why should we be judging people on the basis of something they have no control over?
Dr. Carson, right there before the break, you know, so accurately went into our understanding of the founding and God's role according to our founding documents, not according to our spin, but what the documents themselves say, that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. So God played a very key role. And of course, as Christians, you know, we celebrate our history, and we want to make sure we don't lose that understanding of God's providence upon this nation. What in the 1619 Project that the New York Times is promoting, does God factor in at all in that project and their view of our history?
No, God does not factor in there, nor does godly principles of loving your neighbor, or caring about the poor, about doing the things that should be done. And, you know, when you think about it, in our nation, not only is God prominently mentioned in our founding document, but it's also in our pledge. We are one nation under God. Many courtrooms on the wall, it says, "In God we trust." Every coin in our pocket, every bill in our wallet says, "In God we trust." So is it all a big lie? Or are we being led away from our foundational principles by those who want to make us feel that we need to be woke?
I think it's the latter, without question. Now, Dr. Carson, I know you well, and I know your story well. You're a very well-read man. But so I just want to ask you, as you delved into the document, you were part of the 1776 Commission, and you were having some really good conversations. I know who all was on the commission, some really bright people. Any surprises for you in this process?
I think the thing that perhaps surprised me the most was when I learned that there's actually more slavery in the world today than there was when the Emancipation Proclamation came forth. And it's a serious, serious problem, particularly the sexual slavery that has increased dramatically over the last few months at our southern border, because it's so easy to capture those children. And we need to be extraordinarily concerned about that, but also the pervasiveness of slavery throughout human history. And, you know, if you're going to go back and try to rectify slavery and talk about reparations, where does it end? Where do you start and where does it end? It's a continuum throughout American and world history. So I think we really need to start looking forward rather than backwards. We can learn from things that have happened in the past, but we need to be talking about the things that made America into the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It was our belief systems, our ability to work together. And there were contributions by everyone. Mm-hmm. You know, the 1619 Project tries to make you think that America was built on the backs of just the slaves. People of African descent contributed a lot. There's no question about that. You know, you look at your shoes. There was Jan Matzliger, a Black man, who invented the automatic shoe lacing machine, which revolutionized the shoe industry. You take a phrase like, "That's the real McCoy." That was because of Elijah McCoy, a Black man who invented the automatic lubrication system for locomotive engines, invented so many things. People would say, "Is that a McCoy? Is that the real McCoy?" You know, I could go on for a long time with things that the African people of African descent contributed, but tell you, I can also do that for people of any background in this country. And that's what made us straight, because we were the United States. We made mistakes, we learned from them, we moved forward.
Yeah, that's so good, so important. I don't want to chase this rabbit, but I just have to point this out as you're talking about the slavery and a large part of this in the human trafficking that's taking place in our world today, and even in our own borders here in the United States of America, is a sex trade, is driven by sexual appetites, sexual immorality. And I just have to say, when you want to push God and morality out of our founding and out of who we are, and we have no moral boundaries, you're going to get more of that. And what brought America forward, I believe, and as you said, no one can dispute the fact that we are a nation that had a lot of things wrong, but we've, for the most part, been progressing toward that more perfect union. Yes. And I would challenge anyone to refute the fact that morality, biblical morality, that Judeo-Christian ethic played a key role in that. When you look at the abolition movement, when you look at the civil rights movement, it was at the core of it.
Well, Alexis de Tocqueville came to America to study our nation because the Europeans were just so fascinated. How could this fledgling nation be doing so incredibly well? And, he wrote the 2-volume set, Democracy in America, and analyzed everything. But at the end of the book, he said, he was so impressed by what came from the pulpits in America and how that gave the people the foundation that they needed to be able to accomplish so much. And he said, America is great because America is good. Mm-hmm. And if America ever stops being good, she will cease to be great. I think he was spot on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's why when the former President Trump talked about making America great again, it had to restore that moral foundation of moral goodness in order for us to reach the greatness that he challenged us toward. I want to talk about the commission for just a moment. In President Biden rescinded the Trump administration's executive order on 1776. In fact, I was talking with Mike Gonzalez, and he said it was the first thing he did. He revoked it, rescinded that. But here's what he said. He said the findings of the commission were counterfactual. What was your reaction when you heard that?
It's what I expect to hear from the left. They want to rewrite our history. They want to write it the way that is consistent with their ideology. And so it didn't surprise me in the slightest that would be one of the first targets they would employ. We had to work very hard to change that. That's one of the reasons that we started the Little Patriots program. We just got a huge donation from that last night, by the way. But that's going to really be able to give our young people a true perspective on our history. It is something to be incredibly proud of. The things that we were able to overcome to allow this nation to ascend to the heights are absolutely amazing. And you look at things like World War II, where all of our young men from everywhere went to fight to preserve freedom in the world. And at the same time, our young women went into the factories and built more airplanes, tanks, and mortars than anybody could even imagine. And it was that strength, aided by our faith in God, that allowed us to overcome the Axis powers of evil.
Yeah, I think what the world would look like had America not been able to do that. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it was the common ethic, a common faith, the Judeo-Christian foundation that provided for the unity. I mean, when you look at what happened in World War II, where America came together, it's really like the account of Nehemiah in the Bible, where they rebuilt the wall in a remarkable period of time, 52 days, because the people had a heart to work. They were unified. And that, I think, is going back to what you said earlier, that America's greatest threat is from within as we essentially dissolve. We come apart rather than being out of the many one, we see this pulling apart, and that makes us vulnerable.
Absolutely. And that's the reason that we're working so hard to educate people about our founding documents, about our founding principles, about what we have actually accomplished as a nation and how we did it together. And there's so much good going on in this nation, so much to be proud of. You know, I can tell you as a youngster, you know, growing up, there were so many people who said you can't make it in this society because of all these things. And then I had a mother who just said, forget about all that stuff. Go to the library and read books. And as I read about scientists, explorers, and surgeons and entrepreneurs, I began to see what it really took to be successful. And that the person who had the most to do with what happened to you is you. It's not somebody else. Doesn't mean that there aren't obstacles. But you can sit there and you can obsess over the obstacles, or you can overcome them. And the people who have been wildly successful are the ones who see the hurdles as a mechanism to strengthen them for the next one.
So do you still see America as the land of opportunity where, you know, really your future is what you make of it?
Absolutely. And that is the reason that you have caravans of people trying to get in here. They wouldn't be trying to get in here if they were coming to be persecuted. I really don't think so. And I think people know better than that.
But you're absolutely right. But nonetheless, the left gets by with this narrative, aided by the media that repeats it. And I do think it goes back to the issue of education. I think, number one, our education system has failed our students when it comes to who America really is, our past, our present, and even our future. And so I want you to talk a little bit more.
Yeah,
what's that?
I want to emphasize that point on education.
Go right ahead.
Because the group in America that has the highest per capita and family income are Nigerians. Now, if you know any Nigerians, you know that the baseline for them is a bachelor's degree. They put so much emphasis on education. But it's also interesting that they tend to be Black. And so if we had a systemically racist country, how could the group that has the highest income be Black? That doesn't make any sense. Nor does any of the other things that they say.
One other element about the Nigerians that I know, and I know a lot of them, is they also have, many of them have a very strong faith foundation as well.
That's correct. And, you know, a lot of people who come here as immigrants do very well. And why do they do so well? They come here and they say, what? You mean all I got to do is study and work hard? Are you kidding me? And I can be successful? They didn't have that in the places that they came from. Whereas many of the people who are born here, they just cannot see it for the life of them. Where's the opportunity? Somebody's taking my opportunities. I don't have opportunities. It's completely in the way you look at it. And if you take somebody who has the mindset of a victor, you can take everything away from them, put them on the street, and guess what? They'll be successful anyway. They'll climb right back up there. And you can take somebody who has a victim mentality and you can put them in a penthouse suite, they'll find their way back to the street. Believe me, that's the way it works.
And we've got to change the hearts and minds of people. And I think it's a combined effort of education. I think it's also a promotion of the gospel of Jesus Christ, of letting people know, especially our young people, that they are created uniquely in the image of God. Therefore, they have intrinsic value. And I think that's what we've robbed our kids of in our schools today, where we deny there's a God that created them. I mean, that's one strike against them, because that's what gives us our value. And before we run out of time, you know, connected to that, the Little Patriots Project, I want you mentioned it, but tell people a little bit more about it and how they can take advantage of it.
Well, please go to the website, AmericanCornerstone.org, and you can actually see some videos of our little patriots, 4 years old, saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And they're so proud. And then at the end, they say, "And God bless America." This is what we need to start teaching our young people. And we have lessons for them about faith, about liberty, about community, about life. While all of those things are so important. And we want them to value their fellow Americans, value the people who are around them, and not denigrate and despise them. And the best thing to do is to start teaching them that early on.
Yes.
Proverbs 22:6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." And, it's a variation on what Lenin said, "Give me your children for 4 years, and the seeds that I plant will never be uprooted."
Yeah, so true. Dr. Ben Carson, always great to talk with you. Thanks so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you for dwelling on this incredibly important topic. Appreciate it. God bless you.